Alright everybody, welcome back to another video. So I'm just getting back from work. Today is Thursday, July the 10th, and we're about to take the longest road trip so far in the Cybertruck. So we're gonna split it up into 3 days. We were gonna make it in 2, but that was gonna take 12-13 hour driving days, 2 days in a row, not counting eating stops. So we decided to go ahead and leave tonight, and we're going to drive to Meridian, Mississippi, which, even though at work, so I've got pretty slow chargers at work. You can see I'm only at 72% getting back home right now. We're about to leave as soon as we throw everything in the car. We're going to go from southeast Alabama, where we live. We'll have one charging stop for 14 minutes in Greenville, Alabama. And then we'll come on over to Meridian, Mississippi, where we'll stay at our first hotel. And what that'll do is allow us to only have to make one long travel day. It'll be about a 12-13 hour drive all the way to West Texas tomorrow. And then we'll get up Saturday morning and make the last few hours. I think it may be 6-7 hours. Could be 8, depending on food stops and stuff. From West Texas, pretty much straight up to Denver. So heading up there to see my brother and sister-in-law, who just had their first baby a couple months ago, and looking forward to it. So one thing I plan on doing, since this is the longest road trip that we have taken in the Cybertruck, is I've got one of these cheap little lap timer clicker things, and I'm going to keep up with how many interventions I have to take. I don't think it's going to be that many, but even at just a few over a 3-day trip, I didn't want to lose count and then wonder how many did we say we had. So I'm just going to keep this going with number of interventions and just pick it up anytime I have to take over. As you know, with FSD, from what I've shown before, parking lots and stuff like that are obviously, I've got to drive those. So those don't really count as interventions. You know, I'm going to count things that I have to take over for because it messes up. So right now, the capability of end of drive, parking, unparking, reverse, that type stuff is not even part of it yet. So that type stuff I'm not counting as an intervention. Those are just, the capabilities aren't there yet. So anyway, that lets you know kind of what we're going to do. So I'm going to run in here, get everything packed up in the truck, grab the fam, and we will hit the road. So hopefully I'll have some highlights along the way, and we'll see you then. FSD is engaged. Starting out odometer reading 2969. So I'm going to keep a log of when I disengage and when I re-engage to keep track of what percentage of the trip, like how many miles of FSD versus how many miles that I've driven, and total it up at the end. So that should be kind of interesting. I think it'll be a very high percentage, but we'll see. So this is kind of interesting. We are right over 21,000 miles. No interventions yet. We haven't had to turn off FSD yet, which we've not gone that far. We've gone from our hometown of Dothan through the adjacent town of Enterprise, and now we're headed up toward Greenville. But one thing that was kind of interesting that I wanted to talk about is basically rebooting the vehicle, rebooting the screen, which sounds kind of funny if you're not used to EVs that are like computers on wheels. You can do a full power cycle of the vehicle, which obviously you need to be parked for that, but you can also just reboot the brains of the system by pressing and holding both scroll wheels, which I'm not going to do it right this second. I've already done it. But the interesting thing is, and I already knew part of this because I have done it before just to try it out, is you can hold down those two buttons for 3 seconds and it'll reboot the system. The screen will completely go black, which takes every bit of your indications away. You have no map, no speedometer, no anything. And it only takes about, 20 seconds, 30 seconds maybe. but you can actually do that while you drive. This time I did it at a red light just because I had FSD on and I wasn't sure. That's the part I wasn't sure about, if it would disengage FSD. It turns out it doesn't, so that was really interesting. So you press and hold for 3 seconds, screen goes black, and not only does it allow you to continue to drive, and I've done it driving manually, you still have all your full normal functionality, so you can drive down the road manually, which I already knew, but this time it fully rebooted. Everything came back up. You'll hear the air vents kind of cycle and the AC cycle as it's restarting everything, and it came back up, and not only did it leave FSD engaged, but all the map data was still there, all my routing was still in place, and like I said, FSD was still engaged. So once it started back up, right about the time it finished, the light turned green, and it just picked right up where it left off, which is kind of cool. I think because I'm staring at the screen, it's wanting me to touch the wheel for a second, but the reason I did that was because I was getting a message right above my map data that said navigating without connectivity, meaning the LTE cell signal that the truck uses is basically a cell phone signal that's specific to the truck. It gets its own cell signal for things like navigation, traffic, live traffic updates, live weather, anything like that comes in through the truck's LTE signal, unless you're somewhere within Wi-Fi range and it picks up Wi-Fi signal. All right, we have made it to our first night stop in Meridian, Mississippi. Today, let's see, we're ending at 21,212 miles, and that was 100% FSD. I did not have to take over, other than just parking at where we ate, parking at the supercharger, and then parking here at the hotel, which there is a charger available. See, we're at 20%, and hopefully it's a fast level 2 charger. I did have one intervention right before we got to Cracker Barrel. There was a truck partially pulled off, like they were going to turn, but they were still partially in the lane, and it was going to get extremely close, so it just made me nervous enough to where I went ahead and took over so that I didn't get too close to him or possibly hit his back corner of his bumper. But so that's one intervention in however many miles it is. I'll do the math later when I edit the video. But anyway, that was all the way from Dothan to Meridian, Mississippi, with one intervention and 0 miles not on FSD. So, all right, catch y'all in the morning. All right, so we got plugged in here. This is one of the larger level 2 chargers. However, they've got it throttled to 12 amps, which is super, super slow. We're not even going to get to 50% from 20 from the time we're going to be here, because we're planning on leaving around 7:30. So that's unfortunate, but you just never know what you're going to get. It is free, so it's hard to complain. But yeah, sometimes they're full 48 amps and you can fill up easily overnight. Sometimes they're throttled and they're kind of slow, so it looks like this one's going to be a slow one. All right, we're unplugging here in Meridian due to the 12 amp really slow setting they have on this charger. We only got to about 35%, so we are going to have to supercharge before we get back on the highway. But we'll see how it goes. All right, we just got back on the road in Meridian. I turned on FSD before we even left the parking space, so we've still not accrued any manual miles on this trip so far. Odometer currently at 21,212, 21212, and we're headed to Starbucks first to grab Lisa a coffee, and then we do have to supercharge here in Meridian because of the slow charging at the hotel last night, and then we'll be on our way west. Longest drive of the day, over 900 miles, or close to 900 miles, depending on the route. So we'll see how it goes. I just want to point something out real quick for anybody that doesn't know. I might have mentioned this in an earlier video, but I don't know if I have. So we're at, well, there's a fellow Cybertruck over here. We're at one of the older supercharger locations. It's a 150 kilowatt max charging, which is like 2 generations ago. So occasionally you'll run into these, and you'll see that right now we're maxing out at 146, 147 kilowatts, which is still super fast compared to a level 2 charger, but that's very slow compared to most superchargers. And the difference with these 150 kilowatt, like V2, we call them V2 superchargers, is each pair of connectors come from the same cabinet, and each cabinet is what is rated at 150 kilowatts. So if you park in an adjacent spot to somebody, you're sharing the load from that cabinet, and what you'll end up doing is basically halving your charging capacity with whoever you're with. So number one, you're going to get half the charge speed, and number two, you're going to make somebody else pretty aggravated if they're sitting there charging at 147 kilowatts, and then you come plug in and all of a sudden they're throttled to 75. So when we first got here, there were enough vehicles where it was already every other spot. So when I first plugged in, I was in the adjacent spot to them, and it was only giving me 75 kW. So as soon as another car moved, I slid over a spot, and that allowed it to jump up to the full capacity, which again is relatively slow compared to most of the new chargers. So anyway, thought I'd point that out. So the positive thing, even if you do find yourself at a slow supercharger, is while you're sitting here, you can play arcade games. This one's really fun. It reminds me of one that me and my friend Dylan used to play when we were younger. Alright, we are crossing what I think is the Mississippi River. We're about to head into Louisiana. Just finished our last charging stop in Mississippi, and odometer's at 21,353. So far, FSD has driven every single mile. Like I said, it doesn't do like absolutely final destination parking, so I've done that, but that's been well under 1 mile cumulative for the whole trip. So far, 100% FSD, and still just one intervention back at the Cracker Barrel that I mentioned before. So anyway, continuing on. 101 miles to the next stop. See you there. Alright, we just left our last Louisiana charging stop. We'll be crossing over into Texas here in about 20 minutes. We're at 21,529 miles on the odometer, still at one intervention, way back from our first leg, and still under 1 mile of manual driving. Like I said, I don't even have a record because it's really just been disengaged to park in a parking space and then re-engaged to pull out. So it's been probably less than 100 yards of manual driving over the whole trip. So still essentially negligible. Like I said, under 1 mile for sure. 100% FSD drive so far, and we are about to enter Texas. Our first stop in Texas will be right over the border. We're going to the boot barn to get cowboy hats so we can wear them through Texas. Alright, we are leaving the boot barn. We have our cowboy hats in hand. Currently, odometer is at 21,567, still one intervention, and 100% of the miles still on FSD. 38%. We'll be stopping in Tyler, Texas next for about 15 minutes for a charge. Alright, just finished charging right before Dallas at the Buc-ee's. There's 36 charging stalls here, which is crazy. It's a ton. Most of them were free. Most of them were open. Very short. This is like a 6-7 minute stop. We're at 21,688 miles still. 100% FSD. No manual driving, one intervention still for the whole trip. And we're about to head from here to the other side of Fort Worth to charge while we eat dinner. So headed that way now. All right, we are about to leave Amarillo, charging up before we leave. This hotel last night did not have EV charging available. They had a couple aftermarket chargers in the back, but I couldn't get the QR code to work. So third-party chargers have never been all that great. But we have now driven 1,129 miles from the start. We're at 22,098 on the odometer. Still just the one intervention at the Cracker Barrel the first day. This is starting day, morning of day 3. I meant to film something short when we got to the hotel last night, but to be honest with you, it was almost 3 o'clock in the morning and it was raining, and had been raining for the last couple hours. So that last hour was probably the most stressful of the entire very long day, just because the road markings were not good. There were no reflectors. It's like my headlights were not doing any good, and but FSD did great. It acted like it could see just fine, but I was having trouble supervising it because of the visibility. So I was glad that it could see. But anyway, like I said, we are here for another 20 minutes at the supercharger. We'll have a couple more stops. We got to stop in the very corner of New Mexico, and then the rest of it will be Colorado. A couple stops there before we get to Denver. So last leg here is going to be around 7 hours total trip time today, including charging, and we'll make a eating stop at one of those charging stations. So yep, last day, going to be there soon. So still, sorry, I need to give an update on the FSD mileage. Still to this point, 1,129 miles in, I will say under 1 mile of me driving, and that's just literally parking lots. So once it gets me to a parking lot and says my navigation's complete, I find a spot, park, and then back out and turn FSD back on. So the cumulative amount of all the parking lot driving, I would say, is still under a quarter mile, because it literally takes you essentially to the front door like your normal Google navigation will do. And then, says you're there. Sometimes they'll try to pull in, but with the wheelchair and stuff, there's certain spots that we can't use, so it takes just a little bit more. But anyway, yep, excited to start the last leg of the trip, and so far so good. We are about to pull into my brother-in-law's neighborhood in Denver. Odometer's at 22,513. Started out at 20,969. For a total of, what do we say, 1,544 miles on it? So 1,544 miles and not a single full mile of manual driving. So 1,544 miles from Dothan, Alabama to Denver, Colorado, and FSD did every bit of it. I ended up with 2 interventions. The first one on the first day near Cracker Barrel, where we got too close to a truck and I was nervous about it. And the second one, the lane was ending. And I just didn't like where it was positioned with the car behind me. So anyway, 2 total interventions. You want to pull into it?